Well, this is a first. I think he's been dragged away on business at the moment, so we're going to wait for him to show up. While we were waiting for him to show up, this is Herman, by the way, Herman Kelly. I've met him before over in Ireland when he was running the iRexit campaign, which is basically Ireland's version of Brexit. And there was quite a lot of support for that. And I think, to be honest, the way things are going at the moment, there will be more and more support for that because I think if you were out of the European Union, you wouldn't have been, your troubles over there wouldn't be quite so bad. Okay. Incidentally, have any of you heard of the term NGO? I didn't know what it meant, but I've had these details sent to me, and I think I'll do my best to read them out in my uselessness. Okay. And I really probably should put a set of glasses on for this, but it's interesting the amount of money that goes into them and what they're now perceived to be. Non-governmental organization, or NGOs, are receiving over 6 billion, I believe that's euros, in taxpayers' money per year. These unaccountable NGOs are being used as tools for vested interest groups and are quickly becoming a shadow government to drive extremist objectives of successive governments. Our country has more than 38,000 NGOs. That's Ireland, by the way. More than any other country around the world. Why are we being eaten alive politically by unaccountable NGO proxy government aids? NGOs are also, where did we go? Where did I get that? Because I just looked up. We're also receiving funding from overseas corporations and vested interest groups around the world. All government and opposition parties support NGOs without transparency or accountability, and without, I should say, laws and regulations to safeguard the interests of the Irish people. Ireland is in need of a Foreign Contributor Regulatory Act, right? This is legislation to ensure responsible use of national funds and foreign funds for safeguarding national interests and prioritizing public control over essential services. For example, the FCRA legislation was successfully introduced in countries like India and Hungary. There you go. So NGOs at the moment manage to meet people from the nation that they're trying to flee, and literally they're dotted all the way along the route to by the time they get to you. And they guide them. They tell them who they have to see, where they have to head for. They advise them on what benefits they're allowed, what they should and shouldn't say, what documentation they should take with them and what they should accidentally lose, and facilitate them with clothing, bank cards, phones, etc. You get the idea. They make sure that these people are well and truly looked after all the way until they get to your country, and at which time they advise them who they've got to head to, or who they've got to see, or where they've got to head to. And that's why these people you'll find are in hotels, and your ex-service people or your people with mental health problems are on the streets in doorways. Well, that is until the police come along, or as you call them, I think the Gardaí, and then drag them out and batter them for just being a human being, because these officers seem to me to be somewhat politified. They've been indoctrinated. They're also serving under instructions, and they're told who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, and that's that. So at the moment, there's a lot of rumors coming around the attack of that young girl and the status, and I've had a lot of messages. Right, okay, Chris Card. Messages from my mobile are not coming through up here. Yeah. So until I can get proof, I won't go any further with it. But I don't know if you've noticed, at the moment they're boarding up all the governmental buildings. They're also boarding up a lot of shops in Dublin, and they've stuck up watchtowers, which I have to say would be useless in any sort of a situation, because they wouldn't afford anybody in them any great amount of protection. And I don't think they'd be too hard to be pushed over if it all went wrong. But you have to ask yourself, why are these in place? Are they expecting more troubles? Why are they expecting more troubles? So that's pretty much where we are at the moment. I didn't know also that the guy that I meant to be interviewing now, but he could well be pulled away. So has had quite a career in politics already. He was press secretary to Nigel Farage. He's now press secretary to another MEP over there who's a Catholic minister or so whatever, which is interesting. Has written articles in news papers, kind of thing. He's set up the Irish Freedom Party, and now I think he leads it. And yeah, fairly interesting. And obviously, I'm trying to work out, he's written a book as well. I'm trying to work out how a man like that actually gets any spare time. Now, I'm small fry here, and I'm busy. And I'm just trying to think about how a man like Hermann, and I'm not surprised if he's been dragged away, how he would have the time even to come on to say somewhere like this. But, you know, fair play if he does. I'm assuming because I've messaged and I've not got anything back that there is a problem. So we'll just carry on as we are. What are we doing at the moment? Any of you seen the fact that Tommy got lifted off the streets? That's supposed to be a press person, but that's a press person that won't give the angle that you want. Now, over in Ireland at the moment, what it seems to be is a lot of the press over there are more annoyed about the far right, as they're calling them, and the dangers of the far right and how they need to legislate against the far right so they can make sure that far right can't speak. But they don't seem to want to dwell upon the fact that what actually caused this, which is a person who came to the country from another country and decided that he would attack young children and the carer. They seem to keep that one off their lips. They don't want to talk about it. Now, I would imagine that they've probably been instructed to do this, and the reason they've been instructed is because it might incite racial hatred, right? Problem is, as a duty of care to the public need to know what sort of threat level they're at the moment, because if you don't get the truth, and you don't know that basically there are multiple murders at the moment going on over in Ireland a year, and that people are being attacked purely because they are different, i.e. they're white, or that people are being vilified because, pick your reasons. Hello, how are you?
Reverend Simon, I'm very sorry for being late. I had trouble finding the link there. Apologies.
No, that's fine. Well, I was ad-libbing anyway. And I actually also went through and read out the Safeguard Our Interests on NGOs, because NGOs are a problem. But I just read that out while we were, but you haven't really missed a great deal. So how are you?
I'm very good. I'm doing this because you were at the launch of the Irish Freedom Party 5 years ago, and you very kindly came along and covered the event. So I'm here's thanking you back 5 years afterwards.
Yeah, that was a good day, actually. There was quite a good turnout as well. And I believe personally it needs to happen. I think you need to leave the European Union, because I don't think it's doing you any great favors. So where should we go? What do you want to talk about the political party that you're setting up, or do you want to talk about the troubles over there at the moment, or do you want to talk about where you see the direction of Ireland going on its current trajectory?
Well, let's do a little bit of both. So my name is Hermann Kelly. I'm president of the Irish Freedom Party. Reverend Stephen there was at the launch of the party 5 years ago in Dublin. We're a nationalist Eurosceptic party. We believe, incredibly, that Irish people are good enough to make their own laws, decide our own budgets, and control our own borders. We're only looking to be a normal, self-governing country like every other state outside the European Union. We're not looking for bells and whistles and any kind of free bottle of whiskey. We are just looking to be a normal state. We have huge problems at the minute in Ireland. Many of our young people are, a large amount of unvetted immigration into a country causes problems. Not just in Ireland, we've seen the experience of Italy, France, Germany, Sweden, that it puts pressure on public services. People, in a country where there's finite resources, people coming in, especially 61% of people coming into Ireland looking for asylum claim that they've lost a passport between getting on the plane and getting off at Dublin Airport. So we're being lied to hand over fist. The vast majority of people coming to Ireland are economic migrants. Many of them are welfare tourists who come for our generous welfare payments. But that has a large problem. Attracting these people causes large problems because public services, access to housing, to medical care, to their access to the welfare system costs us a lot of money. And in the face of high demand for housing, rents and prices of houses gone up, the availability has gone down, and many of our best educated young people are therefore looking to start off in life, get married, get a home. They have been forced to go to Australia and Canada. So we're losing our best, and we're taking in the uneducated. We're taking in so many people who we find are welfare junkies, have criminal records, who commit crimes in Ireland. And you know what? It's just not good for Ireland. And economically, Ireland has been a net contributor to the EU budget since 2013. In 2021, we gave a net 1.1 billion euro to the EU budget. EU boats have plundered our waters since the day we joined 50 years ago. Irish boats only get 15% of all fish in our national waters, which is an absolute disgrace. And even things like the carbon tax. It imposes the carbon tax, which makes it more expensive for young people to drive to work. It makes it more expensive for old people to heat their home. Like even just to drink a pint of milk or eat a steak becomes more expensive because of this EU imposed carbon tax. And the latest one, so the government are weaponizing what happened over on Friday, the riots on Friday, or sorry, Thursday, to introduce anti-free speech legislation. They want to silence people because they don't want them discussing issues such as immigration, EU membership, all the stuff about tranny toilets that they seem very keen on imposing on everybody else. And so they're using it as a weapon to introduce anti-free speech legislation, which is to curb free speech and free thought. Basically, it's thought crime legislation is what they're introducing. And it's very dangerous to our natural liberties. We could see, we do have a problem in Ireland that the vast majority of the mainstream press in Ireland are basically just, as I call them, the prostitutes of the whore media. They're basically a propaganda wing of the establishment and of the government. We saw that very clearly during the lockdown when there was no hard questions to those in power. They were being used as propaganda merchants by the government to impose lockdown on the population, that people weren't allowed to go to work, see their family, even allowed to travel. So our fundamental human rights and natural rights are being constricted by an increasingly authoritarian Irish government, which is currently the laughingstock of the world. Because I see Elon Musk and so many well-known libertarians in America are criticizing or laughing at the Irish Taoiseach because of his comments over the last week. So people are amazed at when they read the text of the anti-free speech legislation, which is what the government are looking to introduce now very quickly over the next few months.
Going to your people coming into your country undocumented. Now, the reason they pretend to lose the documents is then they can say, basically, this is the first place that I've come to.
Yeah.
Because under the rules, otherwise, the first place you come to is where you stay. Now, I got it from people up the north that they're actually traveling in from England to the north and coming down through. So that's one thing alone. I mean, if they're managing to do that, then they're definitely 100% economic migrants. That's it. The other thing,
well, you know yourself, the Dublin Convention, even for the EU, now it's on the books, but it's never implemented, that people are supposed to be returned, or they come into the EU, they're supposed to be returned to the first country of entry, which is Italy, France, etc., Greece. But let's take for an example as well about there was quite a large amount of Nigerians who've claimed asylum in Ireland over the last 2 decades. There are no direct flights from Ireland from Lagos to Dublin, from Nigeria to Ireland. And yet all these, I don't know, 30, 40,000 Nigerians in Ireland claiming asylum, I don't know from what. They say that this is the first port of entry in the EU. That's not possible. So we know immediately that these people have lied. And then when they come over, they're saying they're Nigerian, but they all have English accents, or many of them have English accents. Well, they've obviously spent a lot of time in England before
Yeah.
they came to Ireland. So,
Mhm.
like, our government, it's a lack of political will. This whole thing about, oh yeah, open borders, we've got to let everybody in. We're happy to be a free hostel for everybody who wants to come. That's idiotic. No country can sustain that. We're finding it now with welfare. Like, would you believe for Ukrainians alone, next year, the government is putting aside €4 billion. Now, for a country the size of Ireland, that is a huge amount of money. Right.
Massive.
The total budget for the country is 55 billion in a year. And when you're paying 4 billion just for Ukrainian refugees, like it puts it in perspective.
But this
So
is
we're being
refugees.
lied to hand over fist, and we're the ones paying the price, one financially and two in security.
But they said that they were fleeing war, but so many of these people aren't, that they've had to expand it, that they're fleeing persecution now. So what they'll tell them is that you live in a Muslim country, and all you got to do is say, I'm gay and I'm in fear of my life, and that's what I'm fleeing from. And they've given them such a range of reasons to come, or bullshit excuses, and that you can't do anything about it, because they just keep expanding these, and people go, oh. Now, fishing, I was going to talk about that. Basically, we joined the Europe as it was then, and immediately, and immediately, basically, our fishing fleet took a dive. And then there's the scrappage scheme, which I don't know if you got. Europe a scrappage scheme to scrap all our boats because they weren't making enough money, and they were only allowed out a certain amount of days a year, which actually put our fishermen and your fishermen at risk, because they had to go out in bad water sometimes just to. But anyway, our fishing is now, we've got foreigners coming around, so we get these big ships. They hoover it all up, take it back to wherever it is over in Europe. Could be Spain, could be somewhere else. And then, by the way, we're all into green taxes. It has to make its way via truck all the way back, and you've got to pay for it.
That's right. It's comical, isn't it? And then they'll talk about emissions and carbon dioxide phobia. We, like, both Britain and Ireland have been taken for a ride in the fisheries. We were for all the time you're in the EU. It was a very, very bad deal. Of course, the big beneficiaries were France and Spain, and the Netherlands especially. We have to get that back. We can, like, it's a huge resource for Ireland, which would be of great benefit to the coastal communities along the west coast of Ireland. The maritime, taking back control of our fisheries would be a huge plus for that. But as you say, that we're being taken for a ride. 61% of people landing in Dublin Airport claiming asylum claim that they've lost their passport. It's like, do we all look like idiots?
And honestly,
but, it's just ridiculous.
But you got about Donegal. Donegal back in the very early 70s was massive with fishing, right?
Yeah.
And now it's decimated. And people in Ireland will admit that fishing was hard, and you lost people, but it was a source of revenue locally. And you build up also around the fishing. The fishermen come back, they've got to spend their money. The family's got to spend their money. So, if you looked in Hull, there would be the tailors, the butchers, and everything else, all the little shops. The fishing industry would also keep afloat as well. But you lose that.
Well, I can tell you, it was my first adult job when I was 16, was working out of a boat, the Carrick Buoy. We were fishing for salmon on a trawler. We were fishing for salmon out of Greencastle, which is the most northerly, I think, fishing port in Ireland, at the very north of Donegal. I tell you what, that was proper physical work. I never really had a hard day's job after. I worked in building sites afterwards. That was hard as well. But
you don't drown.
I really experienced what work was when I was 16 on a fishing boat. But it was a very healthy way of life. As you said, it generated a lot of income for the fishermen and for the local community. It's a great, even now off Killybegs, those huge trawlers. Yeah, look, I caught, I don't only boast, but I caught 2 bluefin tuna just off Donegal, in Donegal Bay there during the summer. But Irish fishing boats, we've got no quota for tuna at all. So our waters are full of bluefin tuna, very lucrative fish, but Ireland has no quota from the EU, because historically there weren't any, and we didn't catch any. So now there's no quota.
In Cornwall, they were told that they couldn't catch some of these fish that migrate that way. All right. And I don't know if it is those that we're on about, but they were told that therefore, basically, that side of Europe. Now, I remember Killybegs, they had the 3 Donegal trawlers that went out and went down all in quick succession, right? And one was a Carraguna. So when you said Carry, I went, was he on that boat before? I was thinking he could be the right age, but yeah.
Carry means yellow rock in Irish. That's
Right.
what I would do.
Now, I want to get to the press, because you know a bit more about the press than, say, I do.
Yeah.
The press have brought up, I assume that what happens is the paper or the thing will get financial support, and the editor will know that if you start to cover stuff that they don't want you to cover, you won't get that financial support. So are they kind of blackmailed in that respect, or is it just the fact that these people who are in the papers are also politically driven?
Oh yeah, that's a very good point. Both of the points that you bring up are absolutely true. During the lockdown, many of the regional radio stations, they're all getting €90,000 per quarter to keep them afloat. Just recently, the state has removed VAT on all newspapers, so they get a 9% kind of boost to their profits. They're talking the RTE, the national broadcaster, as you may say. They've just got a very multi-million euro bailout from the Irish government. So they're financially dependent on the state to a large extent. Even the newspapers, the state has large job advertisements for state jobs in these newspapers. So they're dependent on the state for moolah. And but also, as you brought up, ideologically, the press in Ireland are extremely left wing. I used to be a journalist myself. I used to stand out like a sore thumb, because you'd be kind of nationalist, Catholic, and they'd think, oh, who the hell is this guy? Why he can't be a journalist? I never once had to make a correction in my life, but these people are very ideologically active, even there during the week. So this Algerian guy that attempted to kill and stabbed 5 people on Thursday. There was a big argument to see last night on Twitter about Irish Times journalists complaining about someone else, about the media organization, which disclosed that it was an Algerian national who stabbed these people in Dublin on Thursday. Of course, they saw it as their job to self-censor. We don't want any public disorder. They've taken it upon themselves to self-censor, of course, with encouragement of the government, because they don't want the consequences of mass immigration being reflected on the government. So they're out basically as propaganda merchants for the Irish establishment, and they're very left wing. So even the national broadcaster RTE said, no, we don't allow any debate about climate change. That's a given.
Right. So they're driven by the policies. They've also got like an ideology that they've got this utopian idea for Ireland, that all people will blend in and get along and it will be beautiful. I actually believe that some of these people still believe this, right? The thing is, none of you wouldn't be saying anywhere near as much, and I wouldn't be saying enough, right? Basically, if they came over, they assimilated and they were lovely, and there was no trouble from them, we would have no argument. We couldn't say much. I mean, yes, it would be terrible that basically Ireland will be demographically replaced within, I don't know, 150 years, sort of something like that.
Well, it's basically 20%, but it's much higher than that at the moment, and that's much higher than Britain as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're one of the highest in the European Union, aren't you?
Yeah. Like, we just looked around. Actually, do you know what? Just physically walking down the street, and not just in the main towns, but even small villages in the country, you're thinking, I'm a minority here. How the hell did this happen? Like 15 years ago, it was all Irish people. Now, I'm a minority in my own town. How did that come about? Nobody asked our consent. That's the important part.
But when I came over to see you, I walked through Dublin. It was nothing like that. Nothing. And to see it now, you're like, which is why I'm planning a trip over there. I wouldn't mind grabbing hold of you for that one, actually, and just getting you on camera and show us a couple of places. I've got a few I want to see. But people over here have to see this, because you can't, the camera doesn't lie, all right? You can't do that, right? So basically, if you just put a camera in the front of a vehicle and drove through Dublin, just drive through, you would see for yourself that this isn't the Dublin that I remember, not at all.
No, even the rate of people coming in here, even in the last year, according to official stats, is so high, it's just unbelievable. Like, you're approaching 200,000 people have come in here as refugees or asylum seekers in the last year and a half.
What was the
I know,
approximate?
like it's 100,000 Ukrainians have come here since last February. 100,000, and
We've
then on
got
top of that, you're having roughly 20,000 a year asylum seekers. That's what they call. And then legally, let me give you an idea. So we call social security number over here PPS number, right? So last year there were 305,000 new social security numbers given out. 69% of those, 69,000 went to Irish people. 237,000 of those went to non-Irish people. Could you imagine? That's almost 250,000 people. 250,000
I'm
people.
still
So
trying to process it, mate.
the press always want to talk about refugees and asylum seekers. Oh, are you against the refugees from Ukraine? No. The main problem that we have in Ireland is completely legal immigration. It's caused by EU open borders that 440 million people have an untrammeled right to walk into Ireland, gain residence, and to stay here, and then go on the dole, get money, get subsidies for housing. It's madness. Look, let's say me and you were offered, look, we could go to Tenerife next week. You get a free house, the kids get an education, you get medical care, and you'll also get £1,000 a month to look after yourself for a party and cigarettes. You'd almost be crazy not to go if you
I
got an
don't,
offer like
I don't
that.
blame
But
them for
that's what
coming.
Ireland is doing for all
I
these people around the world.
don't blame them for coming. Blame you lot for bringing them. Right. And here's the thing.
Exactly. It's the government's fault for allowing these, for encouraging, for putting out the financial inducement for come here, get free stuff, have an easy life. And then if you feel a bit angry, look, if you go around and stab people, sure, that's understandable. You missed it. You missed your dole payment for a month. Would you believe that is the excuse that the press are putting around for this Algerian national stabbing those young children on Thursday? That he had an argument over welfare payments. Now, seemingly, he cut the girl in the neck, which is, as we know, is the Islamo-style attempt at murder. So, and as we know from all across Europe, if it is an Islamic motivated murder, or attempt at murder, it's always put down as, mental illness.
That's the thing. Now, I want to ask you, what was the population of Ireland around 2000, roughly?
2000, we see 1995, it was 3.6. So it was approaching 4 million.
And now?
Oh, it's 5.1.
Right. That's horrendous. Secondly, and this is something that your party is not too keen on abortion. And I don't say I blame you, right? Because if there's nothing wrong with it, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? I believe in certain cases, right? This is me personally, right? I believe in certain cases, if the kid's absolutely, really, really badly disabled, and that's maybe a reason, or rape, that's the only time that I'll go along with that, right? Other than that, you man up. That's where I am on it, but that's my right. However, Irish people, what's their breeding rate at the moment?
It's 1 point. It was my first article for the newspaper in around 2000. Actually, was on demographic change in Ireland and in Europe. Quite interesting. And at the time, 2000, it was replacement level of 2.1 children per woman. It's now just lower than 1.5 children per woman, so we're well below replacement rate. And so demographically, especially as these people coming in here are having children, of course, demographics is destiny. And over a generation or 2 generations or 3 generations, when we have a below replacement level reproduction rate and they have a higher one, well, we get replaced. So I am urging people to vote for us in the elections, to join the party, to donate money to help us politically. And we need to replace the politicians in power before they replace us. Because that is exactly what is happening. It's a demographic replacement.
And you'll encourage, I mean, I would imagine that if you got into politics, you would encourage financially and psychologically people to reproduce who are Indigenous, because
absolutely. But you know what? On this article that went up, I forget the title of it, demographic change in Ireland and Europe, whatever. And it was like, so that's over 20 years ago. It was the beginning of newspapers on the internet. And I remember the comment, the first comment on the article below was some smart ass putting, "Well, I'm willing to do my part," you know. But yeah, we're a pro-life party. I would never accept the principle that it's good to knowingly and willingly destroy human life. And so we're pro-life. That pertains to protecting young innocent children in the womb before birth, and also we're opposed to murder, and we're opposed to killing your granny by euthanasia. So we are a pro-natalist about encouraging young couples to get married, to be stable, to have children, to bring the children up in their culture and their education, etc. So we're pro-family, a bit like Viktor Orban in Hungary. Our policies is to encourage young people to start families, to have children, and to celebrate life and celebrate the culture of their country. Absolutely.
Now, I've noticed over in Ireland, they put a lot of pressure on young people not to have kids because they were saying about the global impact and how the population of the world is too much and how they need to do their bit for the carbon footprint by not having more kids. This was heavily pushed upon them. But when they talk about, because people say, well, what about these people coming into the country that are outbreeding us? Well, that's their culture. It's not consistent.
Yeah, well, the way they talk about Irish people, like we're supposed to be like the hole in the parliament. For the self-hating lefties, every culture is to be celebrated except our own. Well, do you know what? No. We are Irish people. We are proud of our culture, our heritage, our language, our dance, our music. We are fantastic. We got lots of things to give the world, and you know what? We should celebrate. And I always make the joke. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it on your show, but FFF, whatever for freedom. Have plenty of children, and you know, our children are lovely. No country in the world has a future without children. So we're very pro-natalist. We're pro-family. We're encouraging young people to get married and have children and bring them up in Ireland, give their life to Ireland to build up our country, make it a better place for themselves and their children as well.
So I'm going to ask you, how do you see a political way out of this? Say, for instance, your political party came to power. What would be the beginning things that you would start to make sure that you fix the problem that's there at the moment?
Very quickly, I would change the welfare system to stop inducing migrants walking in and claiming free stuff. I would quickly take away these people being handed out free housing in front of Irish people, that stop the inducement of a very high welfare rate, attracting these people to come here. Would stop free legal aid to non-citizens who are spending years in Ireland appealing deportation orders because their application for asylum was rejected as bogus. So it would stop the free legal aid, the welfare, the free housing. I would put a private housing first, and I would lower taxation to encourage people to work and enterprise, to be more independent of the state. I would stop anti-free speech laws and allow people to speak freely. I would try to encourage a diversity of the press. I would try to encourage a more, instead of relying on taxation from multinational corporations, we would use taxes to encourage the growth of indigenous industry, ones that have a link with Ireland, which are not going to be flighty when there's a bad day. They're not going to go off to Thailand or Vietnam to manufacture, but they'll use high-tech, high-skill, high-education graduates to expand on Ireland. And we'd also think about energy is very important. Would you believe by the end of this decade, almost 30% of all electricity created in Ireland will be used for globalist data centers in Ireland? Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
It's unbelievable. 29% exactly. By the end of this decade, 29% of all electricity in Ireland will go for data centers. So we will say, sorry guys, you want your data centers, you have to produce your own electricity. Stop living off the backs of the Irish people. We would think about ways of making energy sources more secure, more plentiful, and cheaper. So we would look at just after independence, we had a very large Shannon project, which is a hydroelectric scheme in the middle of the country. We would look at the safety, security, and efficiency of both nuclear power and hydro and tidal power to generate enough electricity for a growing population.
It's a no-brainer, the fact that you're surrounded by water, and also water is the tidal thing's permanent, right? It's not like we have a bad day with wind, we're not going to get anything, or
exactly
panels and it's not a sunny day because we're getting rain or whatever. And also the carbon, basically the wind power, a lot of that's non-recyclable, so that's bad. Okay, and it's also bad for birds, etc. The solar panels have a shelf life, and you can't recycle them, so that they're useless. But also the water power, you know, it's one of those things that wouldn't be a massive impact, but as I say, be there all the time. But you need to be self-sufficient with electric, because you can be held to ransom by other places if they're supplying you, like we are to France, which is a problem. But there it is.
Of course, where do they make their electricity? Nuclear power stations.
Exactly that. And then when we're building one down the way here, and I can't help but think they're dragging out a lot, because I've worked on some of the infrastructure, you know, like the pylons they've had to put in. All of this could have been done so much quicker, but they've dragged it out because the public are paying for this. It's literally a cash cow. So yeah, you'd have to put.
Yeah, we are not true believers in the climate alarmism. Like, I studied biology, studied marine biology at university. I do know for sure that carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. It's necessary for plant growth. So the idea, we do know from various means that the climate has been much hotter and much colder than it is now, and that CO2 levels have been much higher and much.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't been much lower than they are, but they've been much higher than they are at present. I don't see any proof of causal link between CO2 and global warming. Climate change has and will always happen. It's natural cycle. The main impact is caused by proximity to the sun. It's Milankovitch cycles was an idea come up by a Slovak geophysicist over a century ago. He was proven to be correct with new knowledge in the 1970s. Like, Ireland needs new energy. So immediately we would reopen peat power stations, which were closed there in the last number of years. We would restart oil and gas exploration off the coast of Ireland in the medium term. But long term, we would look, as I said, to introduce tidal power and looking at the cost and efficacy of nuclear power as well. That's our way forward for Ireland.
I mean, you yourself know that all these people that scream on about that the seas are going to rise have now, especially in America, bought properties right on the seafront, right, low level. And it's like, if you actually believe that, you wouldn't be doing that. So, and if they actually believed in all of these low-level lands that that this was going to happen, they wouldn't be building houses there and giving people mortgages, etc., to do this. So we all know that's rubbish. Not just that, they drilled over in, was it one of these where the ice goes down nearly 2 miles, and they took the samples out, and as you say, they checked and they said, well, it's been a lot worse. But when you go back further, and they take their results from a set amount of time, but if they went back further, they would see it was a lot more different there. But
yeah, they just want to start counting. The scam is that they want to count from 150 years ago with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But if you go back much further, as you say, ice cores, you can do the kind of tracking. You can have an idea of the temperature and the CO2 content at the same time by the analysis of the gas trapped within these cores. And look, there's a great series on YouTube, PBS, which is public broadcasting service on the US. It's called the EON series, EON. That basically has great videos, and it's all backed up with scientific papers at the end. But they show that the climate has been much colder and much warmer. And like the Antarctic, there was snow. Spain was covered in snow and ice. It's on millennia ago. The Antarctic was like, there was animals and plants there. So it's been much colder, much warmer, and we know from analysis that we are at a historically low level of CO2. Actually, that CO2 levels have been much higher. So there's no causal link between the two. So I just think it's a mechanism by which those in power can control populations. And if you can control people's energy and food, you control, and farmers, you can control people.
Well, there is. Now, I know you're really busy today and you've got to catch a plane. So do you need to get off? Because if you do...
I'm actually, what time is it?
10:40 now.
Yeah, no, another 10 minutes is fine. But I'm actually going to meet the great grandnephew of Padraig Pearse. Padraig Pearse was a signatory of the Proclamation of Independence in 1916. He was a leader of the garrison, IRA garrison in the GPO, which is Irish Fight for Independence against foreign rule. And so I'm going to meet his great grandnephew, who's a great supporter of ourselves. And it's a great privilege for me. He came and spoke at a party, Ardèche, or AGM there during the summer. Tall, very good looking, grew up in New Zealand and lives a bit is hoping to come and study in Ireland. So going to meet him, for me, is a great privilege to have that kind of historical continuity of people with that pride and that belief in Irish independence and sovereignty. It's very, very important. Now, there's not many in the media who are like that, but I'm telling you that national sentiment is coming back in Ireland. National patriotic sentiment is definitely coming back in Ireland.
You've just seen what's happened with Geert Wilders, right? And obviously over in Argentina.
I have his, would you believe I have his number on my phone, but I didn't text him to congratulations.
He's quite funny, isn't he, as a bloke? Right? But he,
I tell you what, he's very tall.
Yeah, and that hair as well makes him even taller.
His hair is his signature tune. But he walked past me in the Parliament there. I've seen him a few times. He's the Dutch are the tallest people in the world, and Geert Wilders is a very tall guy. It's the only country in the world, like I'm over 6 foot. It's the only country in the world in which I felt short.
I'd be dwarfed. I'm 5
foot. They're very tall people.
But he's won, and everybody used to take him as a joke, and there you go. And the thing is, at the moment, you may not be popular within the press, but there'll be people going, well, we need somebody who actually gives a shit about our country. And I can see in the future, yourself, you'll be like this, and all of a sudden, it'll just do that. And you know, people like yourself.
What I can tell you, look, I can feel it. You can feel it. The way, look, even in polls, Red Sea poll in summer this year, 75% of people are opposed to more immigration into Ireland, are opposed to any more refugees coming into Ireland. Like, so that is the mainstream position, but the press are harping on as if that view is a minority, or it's far right to have those views, when the vast majority of the population believe that. So they know, that's why they're screaming. Like when an animal is dying, it gets a kind of, it barks, and the press know that on this issue of immigration, Irish people have had enough. The mainstream media know that, but they try to silence by shouting at people, name-calling people, to shout people into silence. And that's why the Irish government are attempting to introduce draconian anti-free speech legislation, because they know they have no arguments in their favour, and they're just trying to shut down debate. And it's going to be very dangerous.
That law won't work on most people, because by the time they've actually got to that law, they'll realize that this isn't about anti-racism, right? This is purely about stopping the people who know, telling the people that don't. That's all it is. And to be honest, the people that do know, that realize it, so that if you don't fix the problem now, it's terminal, and the thought, or the idea of your country turning into an Islamic country, which is the potential, right, is just not a thing, because there'll be a lot of people that will be victimized. The living conditions, the what you'll have to subjugate to is just unfeasible. So many people know this, and they think that, well, getting done by the press, that's a minor in comparison, or getting done by the, like, for offending.
Yeah, do you want to be called names by the Irish press, or do you want your daughter to be raped and her throat cut as she's coming into school, as happened on Thursday? Like, so the choice is pretty easy to decide on, like, you know. So we've been called dirty words by some Dublin 4 kind of posh boy. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. So, but if you stick to your gun,
I will tell you what. Look, so I'm in County Louth a year and a half ago. Sorry, I have 4 daughters, and a guy moved in 2 miles from my house who was convicted rapist, who was convicted of raping, attempted rape on a 14-year-old girl 3 times in a public park in the middle of the day in Derby. Now, this Slovak Roma called Roman Krok moved in 2 miles from my home. Of course, I was very unhappy to hear this. He was convicted rapist. He moved here because his mother, the Slovak Roma, had been given a free 3-bedroom social house, brand new, beautiful house by the Irish state. So why wouldn't he come over here? But the idea that the Irish state and politicians would allow a convicted rapist to move into their country, that his mother was given a free social house, brand new. What has she ever contributed to the state? Nothing. Actually, they go around here thieving. And he was caught for breaking and entry. They immediately came over here, breaking and entry all over the place. But he was caught by the police and he was convicted. But why were they, like, so this Algerian guy, he was supposed to be deported 20 years ago, but he wasn't. The Slovak Roma, it contributed nothing to our country, but he was allowed to stay here on welfare and free housing. This guy, the rapist, why is he in our country? We have to ask, not why is this happening, but why are these people allowed in our country in the first place? They simply should not be here.
It's like your government are trying to destroy the country. And
Yeah.
it's like they're almost stirring up a culture war, because that's what it'll be, whether we want it or not. Nobody wants it. Nobody in their right mind wants violence. Nobody wants a war. Nobody wants any of that. What they want is things to be like they used to be. Now, I've heard on LBC, they're going, oh, you conservatives, you hate change. No, change is inevitable. We get that, right? Now, if you had migration at the levels it was, say, for instance, 60 years ago, then people wouldn't even notice it.
Yeah, that's right. Slow, incremental. People wouldn't even notice. They come in, people would integrate. They learn the language, they get along and move along. People wouldn't even notice. Look, some people like Chinese, whatever, for their dinner, a Thai, whatever. Small incremental change, no one notices.
But this is
But when the speed and the extent and the difference in the culture, Islamic culture is not compatible with Western values. They come in, their book, the Quran, which I believe is a proto-terrorism manual, it 109 times it encourages people, it tells Muslims that they must commit violence on unbelievers, behead them, stone them, whatever. It basically admonishes them to dominate or to annihilate non-believers. So that's a very dangerous political ideology with a veneer of religion. And as we can see in Germany, in France, and in Sweden, and in Britain, that every prime minister in Europe in the last number of years, be it Merkel, Cameron, Sarkozy, they all said that multiculturalism has been a disaster. It hasn't worked. And especially with Islamic immigration, it's not only wrong, it's also violent. Like the whole thing of, this guy is supposed to be the perfect man, but sorry, as a 53-year-old man, he married a girl at 6 called Aisha, and he raped her when she was 9 years of age, had sexual intercourse with a 9-year-old girl, pre-puberty. Sorry, that is what we call pedophilia legally.
I mean, his scribe, basically, he was talking to his scribe, and his scribe went, well, that doesn't make any sense. So he went back to the scribe went back to him and said, do you actually mean this? He went, yes, you must be a prophet too. So the scribe walks away and thinks, I'm not a prophet. And neither is he. He's full of shit. And then jumped off across the desert and joined Christianity. So was that the beginning of where you can't leave Islam because of reasons? But if we looked at, say, for instance, Iran, prior to the Ayatollah taking over there, it was the Ayatollah that took over there, right?
Yeah.
You could look at the women that were dressed in Western clothing, very beautiful. They were wearing mini skirts. I mean, they were lovely. And the place was pretty, quite cosmopolitan. Anyway, this totalitarian dictator from Islam takes over and turns the place back into the Dark Ages. And you're like, well, can you not see that everywhere this place goes and takes over and has extreme Islam in it, it makes it a miserable hellhole. And that's what's coming to Europe if they get their way.
Yeah, no, it's absolute, it's madness. It is, there is in Ireland this kind of Sinn Féin, the Workers' Party, was a Marxist party in the 1970s, which changed from being nationalist to internationalist, and it is replete with cultural self-loathing. They detest everything about the Irish people, the culture, especially their political sovereignty, and they celebrate every culture but our own. I talked about the Pole and the Parliament earlier. They celebrate that. Sinn Féin have now become like that. Some people are hoodwinked into thinking that they are a nationalist party. They're not a nationalist party at all. They're not a patriotic party. They're a globalist party in favor of Brussels rule, in favor of all this newfandangled silly stuff whatever comes from American universities, be it all this tranny stuff or all the ridiculous carry on. They're all for it. Well, we're not. We're not.
They fought the fight for 30 years up in the north.
Yeah, their immigration policy summed up with the phrase "Brits out, everybody else in." So now they were opposed to British colonisation of Ireland, but they're more than happy to allow every Tom, Dick, and Harry come from any country, whatever, into our country. And it's cultural self-loathing.
See, they sold it to the Irish people, especially up in the north. We want a united Ireland under a socialist government because British rule has been bad. Capitalism's been bad for us, right?
Yeah, but it's crazy because they're happy for Irish people to be a minority in their own country. I don't see what's nationalist about that.
They sold
but I tell you what, Reverend, if you don't mind, I do have to go off and see this guy.
I've got to go to the gym, unfortunately.
Oh, very good.
Well, it's been lovely having you on, and I do want to cover the problems there. So
yeah.
Well,
as I said at the start, I really appreciate that you came over 5 years ago, so I'm really happy to repay the compliment here today. So thank you very much for the invitation to do this interview.
Lovely having you on, right? I shall end the stream now, and I'll say thanks very much, and you have a good day, all right?
Yeah, always sure. Slán Hispanic, thank you.